recognize that the Hogan Administrative Center occupies the land of the Ho-Chunk people. Please take a moment to celebrate and honor this ancestral Ho-Chunk land and the sacred lands of all Indigenous peoples. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Baumann?
Here.
Ms. Berkedal?
Excused.
Dr. Garcia?
Excused.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Dr. Jimenez?
Here.
Mr. Newmeister?
Excused.
Mr. Korberg?
Here.
Dr. Sprague?
Here.
Ms. Sukla?
Absent. A quorum of the Board of Education is present, so the regularly scheduled meeting of August 7th, 2023 is called to order. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, I need my screen to load. So tonight's agenda has been previously distributed to the board. So with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez, we will approve the agenda as submitted unless there's a motion to amend. Hearing none, we'll do a quick voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. We'll move on to our public speakers. And it looks like no one is registered tonight, so we will bump off to our school showcase. And tonight we have representatives from the Boys and Girls Club. I'll invite you up to the podium, and Dr. Engel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, we're incredibly thankful for our partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater La Crosse, and we're thankful to have some presenters here to kind of inform us on that partnership and what it's looked like over the last couple of years and what we're doing now and into the future. So I'll turn it over to them.
Absolutely. My name is Andy Keel. I'm the Director of Operations for the La Crosse Area Boys and Girls Clubs, and I oversee all the operations that occur here in the city of La Crosse. And I'm joined today by Joan Park, our Chief Operating Officer, and we're really thankful to be here to talk about some of the partnerships that we have at the Boys and Girls Club and what we're really trying to do every single day to be an extension of what the school district is providing the kids that they serve in this community. So we'll just kind of get started, and Joan's going to talk a little bit about just some of our structures and more of an organizational overview, and then we'll dive into the partnerships that we have with the school district.
All right, thank you. I'm going to move pretty quickly, but if you, I know we have some time for questions and answers at the end, but feel free to interrupt me if you have additional questions. So we have an executive leadership team that consists of 4 people, myself, Jake Erickson, who's our CEO, our Director of Development, Nicole Bry, and then we also have our Director of Finance, Nicole Schaefer. In addition to that, we have a leadership team that covers operations in La Crosse, and then we have a separate Director of Operations that handles our operations specifically in West Salem, Holman, and soon to be Onalaska. We also have a Director of Community Engagement, our Youth and Family Services Director, who's in charge of all of our mental health services, as well as our Athletics Director. Our operation team consists of different tiers of employees as well. So we have area directors that operate and oversee the operations at each one of our clubs based on location. Program directors who are underneath area directors, and they specifically do all of the programming for youth based on their ages and the different things that we're targeting based on our grant applications. We also have directors that work specifically with our teenage population, as well as school site directors. So specifically in La Crosse here, that would be Northside, and then the Hamilton location as well. We do offer specialized services that I think a lot of people aren't super familiar with. So we have a youth and family services department. So we have 4 mental health providers that are actually employees of Mayo Clinic. It's another partnership that we have, as well as a director of that department. We also have a graduation specialist, so we house a graduation specialist both at Logan High School and at Central High School, and they work with kids in addition to providing additional academic help. They work with our students to help them overcome some of those additional barriers that kids oftentimes have, like getting to school, having the right equipment for school, and connecting them with services as necessary. And then we also have emphasis on our education and academic programming. So in addition to the Be Great Graduate, we have a program that we started out at our Holman Club, and we are bringing to La Crosse, which we're super excited about, which is our Success to Sales program. So that's been a really successful educational program where we work with faculty that our students see every single day to help them identify things that they could use some extra help with. And then we have trained education specialists that do a lot of fun programming with kids, but also help work on those skills that teachers have identified that they could use more assistance with. So we're really excited about that program as well. We do have some administrative support staff, but not a lot for the size of our organization. And then our part-time staff, of course, those are the people that are on the floor with our kids every day. We typically have about 500 part-time staff annually. A lot of that is college students, so there is turnover based on what their school schedules look like. I would say at any one time in all 8 of our locations, we probably have about 140 to 180 part-time staff at any given point. And then in addition to that, we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. So annually, we utilize about 800 volunteers, not just for our athletics, which a lot of our volunteers are in our athletics, but we run tons of programming that is also volunteer-based. Club locations. So we currently have, our slides show that we have 7 locations. We have 7 technical locations, but we also have an extra location at Huber Homes that isn't on this slide because it's not a chartered site. But we do have a club, so we have the Terry Erickson Club, which is right by Logan High School. We have our Shoe Mullen Club, and then the Huber Homes Club. We have our Northside Elementary School Club, where we serve kindergarten through 2nd grade. We have the Don and Cheryl Brennigan Club in West Salem. The Amy Matthey Club, which is on Viterbo's campus. That's actually one of the first boys and girls clubs following that structure in the nation, and has been really successful and followed by a lot of other organizations since that was created. We have the Hamilton Elementary School Club, and we also have the Holman Club, which is the Dave and Barb Scogan Club. As well. And then we are breaking ground a year from now, I believe, on the Onalaska Club. So we're also going to have a 9th club in Onalaska Middle School. This slide, I'm not going to go into details, but I think it's interesting just for people to see the amount of growth that we've had since 2014. So our membership has increased by over 1,000 students, and it's fluctuates. You can see where it dipped down to about 2,400 kids annually, and that was a result of COVID. We did shut our doors for about a week, maybe 2 weeks during COVID, and then we worked really closely with the school district, actually, so that kids who didn't have parents at home came to the clubs, and we facilitated their online learning at the Boys and Girls Clubs. So we were able to stay open during that time period, which we're really proud of. Our budget has increased from 2014 at $1.5 million, and we are now over a $3.5 million organization. This year, our budget's closer to $4 million, and next year, we're projecting we'll be at a $5 million budget annually. And this is me too. And the last one, we wanted to just give you some information about who we serve. So attendance, the attendance is who we serve at all of our clubs combined. So we serve about 4,000 youth annually, 1,500 athletic members, and over 900 youth per day at our clubs. And that number is increasing. In terms of ethnicity, this is the La Crosse School District and the La Crosse Boys and Girls Club kids, so our students, our kids. And we serve, the population is 47% white, 25% Black or African American, 17% multiracial, 6% Asian, and 3% Hispanic. And then in addition to that, we are at 54% of the children we serve are from single-parent homes, and 72% of the children that we serve in the La Crosse School District are free and reduced. Now, Andy's really going to jump into all of the work that we do together.
So we have obviously a ton of partnerships with the school district of La Crosse, and I listed out a few here today, most of these being funding sources, but we also have partnerships in regards to busing. We have partnerships in regards to just communication with principals and faculty if given permission by parents, and we have partnerships on a daily basis where we're trying to communicate so that schools are aware of any situations that might have happened at the club, and just a lot of daily stuff that we are really connected with the school district. The partnerships that I'm going to talk about tonight are funding sources through things like Fund $80, which helps support our programs at the Hamilton site and the Northside Elementary site, as well as Huber and Shoe-Mullen. ESSER grant, out-of-school time grant, which supports a lot of services that we have throughout our entire organization other than the Hamilton and Northside Club, because those are Fund 80 clubs. The ESSER Summertime Grant, which supports all of our summer programming currently. The 21st Century Grant, which is new, pre-grade graduate, which Joan touched on with some of our graduation specialists, and then building partnerships that include us being directly in the facilities of Hamilton and Northside, as well as graduation specialists at Logan and Central. And then we also have major partnerships with the community services team through the school district at Shoe-Mullen and at Huber Homes, which we're also partners with. The YMCA, the neighborhood resource officers, and all sorts of other community and county partnerships. So through these partnerships, we've been able to really enhance and establish a really strong academic and mental health program, and that's what I'm going to kind of highlight tonight. And we talked a little bit at the beginning about wanting to be an extension from school day. And we're much more than just a program after school that you drop off kids and we have a couple staff supervising, them playing in the gym for 3 hours. We really want to do extensive work to help get our kids, as you saw, 72% free and reduced lunch, built skills around academics, mental health, and then just team building and community work as well. So with some of these partnerships, we've been able to add what we call academic support staff. So each of our programs at the club come with an activity that has to be planned out, and our academic support staff are who runs and facilitates our high quality programming sheets, which include strictly academic work for 30 minutes a day, but also just all of the other fun activities that we try to do. We try to incorporate some form of academics within those programs and allow our staff as academic support staff to, that is their sole job. They're there to facilitate these programs. As Joan mentioned, we have a lot of college students, so it can be difficult at times for them to facilitate, correct behaviors, manage the room, do all these other things. So we've used some of this funding to be able to invest in academic support staff where they come in and they know throughout the day that their job is to basically teach these activities that we have throughout the day. And we're able to do some more intensive training with a smaller number of staff to be able to teach the skills and enhance their skills when it comes to this. In the summer and then also during the school year, we run a program called Brain Gain. This is a Boys and Girls Club of America program that this summer our academic support staff have been facilitating to our kids, which is to help kind of bridge some summer gap issues with academics. So each of our kids do 2 brain gain sessions one in the morning and then 1 in the afternoon. We do serve kids in the afternoon that might not attend in the morning, and we want to make sure all of our kids go through an experience and get to participate in at least one of these brain gain activities. All of our programs, whether it's fun, gym activity that really doesn't have a lot of in-depth research based behind it, goes into a high-quality program sheet or an HQP, and what these are a Boys and Girls Club version of a lesson plan. So all of our staff come in. These high-quality programs are developed by our program directors, and then when they're arriving in the day, our program directors connect with our part-time staff, go through what these are, go through the purpose of them, and at the end of the day, our frontline academic support staff provide reflections on how the activity went and suggestions on how to maybe improve the activity for that individual group that they were serving. Joan talked a little bit about our education specialists. These are going to be new to our program starting in September at the Hamilton site, based off of a grant that we worked with the Community Services Department to do more intensive one-on-one or maybe small group skill building when it comes to math and reading. So this will be a program that is connected to our Hamilton site where we serve K through 2nd students, and they will get pulled out into what we're calling our Sales to Success program, where they will work on skills that they need. And those skills and those areas of skill deficits when it comes to those academics will be communicated through the person who's running that position, as well as their teachers, so we can best do individual support for kids rather than more large group trying to work to the middle. This will allow us to do more intensive one-on-one stuff. The graduation specialist Joan touched on in Central and Logan. And then one program that is my favorite that we partner with the UWL Academic Education Department is something that we call Reading Buddies. And in that program, students from UWL in their second year literacy program, and then I believe also this year they're going to be doing third year students, get assigned one-on-one to a student, and we go into the libraries at Hamilton and Northside where they work on one-on-one reading skills. And those students at UWL are able to assess maybe some needs or deficit that individual students have, and then they work out plans to get them to try to get to them at reading at grade level and things like that. So they get to be one-on-one. That is an 8-week program that we run in the fall and the spring, and it's my favorite program that we currently have at the Boys and Girls Club, getting to walk into a library and see 40 UWL students working with 40 of our students every single time. And it's when a student's on vacation or maybe has to work and something came up, it's always fun to, it's not fun, I shouldn't say that. It's always nice to see students get upset, members at the Boys and Girls Club upset that they don't get to go and practice their reading skills in the library. Another big area of focus that we've had is on the health and wellness and mental health of our students and our members at the club. Our Youth and Family Services Director, Laquita, was our first specialist in the organization, worked out of the Matthew site, working predominantly at the time with teens, trying to work on behaviors and skill deficits that they might have, and for us to be able to support them, even if it wasn't the best fit for them to be inside of our buildings with large capacities of kids after school. That program's evolved now, where Laquita is now overseeing currently 3 specialists, 2 of them in lacrosse, 1 solely focused on the south side, housed at the Matthew Center, and 1 on the north side at the Terry Erickson Club. We also do evening meals and healthy snacks. We get a healthy snack from the school district. We work with the nutrition department to get those snacks, and then we serve a meal at the end of the night at 5 o'clock for all of our members that we partner with the Hunger Task Force to get meals. We've also done partnerships through those meal programs with the dietetics department at Viterbo to try to provide a more nutritional meal, and that's always been a goal. We do have to resort sometimes to hot dogs and mac and cheese, but the kids usually really enjoy those as well. Another program based off of SEL that we have is our Smart Moves program. This is a more individualized mental health program from Boys and Girls Club of America that really works with students in coping skills and being able to process their emotions and build skills for them to be able to then bring those items that they learn out into the real world and into our clubs and into schools. With the partnership of the ESSER funding, we also we purchased the Second Step curriculum for all 4 of our sites in lacrosse, which is more of a larger group community building aspect that we can use that curriculum to build community within our clubs, but then also try to take that out into the community and surrounding where we're at. For like the Matthew Center is in that Viterbo community on the north side. We try to get out by Logan High School there. One big thing that these have also been able to provide, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, is just some healthy field trips for our kids to be able to go out into the real world and bring skills back into the club, but also for us to build skills at our sites and then be able to take them out into the real world where they practice them outside of our walls. And I have a little bit more information on that. So our Youth and Family Services mental health department and specialists, they do a lot of caseload management where they are impacting individuals that we contact their parents, and they get involved within those programs, and they have skill building, they have behavioral plans, but they also just have emotional needs. The doors are always open where they can just pop into those rooms and get the support that they needed. And one thing we started again this year, it took a break over COVID, is our specialists are now going to schools and meeting with small groups of kids that are on their caseload, and to help support them during the school day as well. So just trying to be an extension of things that we have at club. It's always nice as a club staff to go into a school because kids are usually just a little bit more excited to see you outside of the normal setting. I'm sure teachers can say the same when they see them elsewhere. And we've been able to bring that and provide more of one-on-one need and one-on-one support from trained and educated professionals. community experiences and off-site social emotional learning. Just this summer alone, with a partnership with the ESSER funding, we've been able to take kids to Mount Olympus, Madison Zoo, Perot Park. We've gone bowling twice in La Crosse. We're going to high rollers next week. We took all of our lacrosse kids to a Loggers game. And then we did my favorite event, which is held at Swanson Field on the north side, which is called Summer Showdown, where all of our kids, we have south side group, north side, and then we have Holman and West Salem, and we all come together on Swanson Field, and we do games of spirit contests, relay races for kids, staff tug of war, and we partner with the La Crosse Police Department, and this year West Salem and Holman Police Departments joined us for that as well. And individually, it's nice to get all of our organization together, but for the individual clubs, the sides of town, they get to do team building skills, team building exercises with kids that they're around all summer. Now they get to come together as a team and try to go and take that, what's called the spirit stick. And a lacrosse club has never lost the spirit stick. So I always like to value that and make sure our Homeland Director of Operations knows that. So that's kind of just a quick rundown. We do want to give any time for any questions that we may have based off of just some of the things that we're doing, or maybe a deeper dive into any partnerships that we do have. So, any questions?
Thank you. So questions from the board?
Yes.
With the visits during the school day from the youth and family specialist, how many times in a given week are they able to see the students on their caseload?
The goal is once a week. It's kind of different for each individual group, or if it's a school, we do just commonly have more connection with schools that we're in, like Northside and Hamilton, just because our specialist is visible often there. But we also serve the most kids from those schools as well. So the goal is once a week, but we want to make sure that we are not, imposing is probably the wrong term, but we want to make sure that it's convenient for the school as well, because they're also providing tons of services.
Great.
I just wanted to say, wow, I knew you did a lot of things for kids, but boy, we're glad you're there. We need you. I know you talked a lot about a lot of the programs, or a number of the programs, as ESSER funding, and that's not going to be there. Is there talk about what can be done to help out, to continue some of those programs that are so impressive?
So I brought Joan.
Yes, there is. So the district, through a lot of those funds, we have been able to, those funds have already been set aside. We had money in our budget to provide the services, and then we didn't have to use that money. So we've been able to do a little cushion so that we have something to cover all of those services going forward. In addition, a big part of from a budget standpoint, what it's allowed us to do is that our services are free. So like those field trips that we talked about, when I first joined the club, it was always hard because there were a lot of kids who just couldn't go. Their parents literally did not have $5 for the bus, and we couldn't cover it. So all of these services are now free to kids. We've always had scholarships, and we'll always continue to do that, but this has just opened the doors. Even our summer programming this year, we had more kids that we've never seen before, because all of our summer programming from 7 to 5 p.m. is free because of the partnership with the school district. So yes, we are continually working on making sure that we can cover all of those costs going forward. Some of it has been, and I think will continue to be, through additional partnerships with the school district, where different kinds of funding becomes available. But our goal is always to sustain everything that we've taken on.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
I just want to add to that too. One thing that's been really great about the ESSER funding is it's allowed us to bring in some extra people with those academic support staff and behavioral specialists, and allowed us to kind of reset and help our kids build skills after COVID. It's really allowed us to make something that we were looking at 2 years, and we've been able to do it in 7 to 9 months, and really been able to focus on getting our kids back to a really safe, calm environment. And the ESSER funding and all the other funding has really allowed us to do that in a much more timely manner.
I have to throw one more thing in, sorry. It's also given us the opportunity to track a lot of data. So people that we might not have been able to get funding from our private donors for, to bring people into our clubs, now we have data that shows the difference that having the additional funds of ESSER funding and other sources, we can show people that it's working, which makes it easier for us to replace the funding when we need to.
Thanks.
Can you tell me a little bit about the staff qualifications of the mental health staff? What qualifications do they have to provide the mental health services?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing where we started with that was finding staff that had been around for multiple semesters and had already built a lot of skills with communicating with our youth and family services specialist. But in order to earn that title, you now have to have an individualized training by one of our youth and family services specialists to not only go over what the job description is and the importance of you're there to support kids who maybe have to leave the room, but they also go through an intensive training with them to be able to qualify and be able to prove that this is more than just a program staff position in which you're running a group. So they do go into our youth and family services department and they get an individualized training that has been developed since these positions have been created.
And then I think I can clarify a little bit. So what Andy's talking about is the part-time staff that we have on the floor that is particularly focused on working with kids with high-need behaviors. But in addition to that, we have our youth and family services directors, and part of those qualifications are that they're seeking or currently enrolled in a graduate program for providing therapy and counseling. And those are all hired through Mayo Clinic. And then our director of youth and family services, who we keep referring to as Laquita. Laquita is a licensed therapist.
So the direct frontline staff, do they have degrees, or they're working toward degrees? Are there any qualifications like that? And how long is this training that you provide? How many hours or whatever?
It's a 6-hour training that they have to do over a week period before that they can go into it, and they don't have any specific, we haven't written any specific qualifications into the job description, but at the same time, many of the people in our community are going, or in our clubs are going for things like social work or counseling, and those are the ones that we try to identify as ones that would fit best within those roles.
Can you tell us the amount of budget that you receive for this out of Fund 80, as well as the total amount that you receive from the district for on an annual basis?
I do not have those numbers with us. I'm sorry, I was not prepared for that.
Is that something staff would know?
Yeah, I believe I think it's $200,000 annually for the running of the programs at the North Side in Hamilton, I believe. And then the ESSER and out-of-time grant stuff, Kurt can look that up for us. It's been relatively substantial. It's been amazing what we've been able to do in partnership as a result.
So how do we get outcome reports then on these investments? And you talked about being able to track more outcomes. So how do we get that information?
Yeah, we can put together a report, kind of what it looks like end of year, and share that with the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are sizable investments, and they sound like good investments. I don't have any issue with them. I'm just, in our job of stewardship for the community, we should be able to speak to the community about the outcomes that we get for these.
Certainly.
Dollars for combined ESSER out of school time plus summer ESSER over the next, so that'll cover out of school time programming and summer programming until September of 2024, $930,000 for the Boys and Girls Club.
Does that include the Fund 80?
Nope, that's
Okay.
just the ESSER.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for all these programs, when we write partnership agreements, we establish what the metrics are. For instance, for our ESSER grants, we're tracking kids who have a certain level of participation in those programs, and we're actually tracking them in our system to measure impact on that. But our Fund 80, both schools get a regular report on participation in those programs as well. So all that would be available.
Yeah, every MOA through Fund 80 has reporting measurements that we track with our various partners, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA or the La Crosse Police Department. So we have things that we're actively seeking.
I mean, it sounds like a great program, and I'm confident you have good outcomes. I just like to know what they are so we can celebrate them. Thank you.
Absolutely.
President Baumann, it's not my place to ask a question, but may I?
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
absolutely. Yeah.
Andy, this may be best for you. I'm just curious with just the number of part-time staff, et cetera, if you could talk a little bit about the professional development necessary, and if the district and the Boys and Girls Club, how we've partnered around that PD.
Yeah, so all of our staff go through 2 hours of onboarding process and then also shadow a staff for a week. But as far as partnerships that we have, many of our staff are also inside of some classrooms at Northside and Hamilton to just be able to observe and be able to learn from teachers who are modeling common language and expectation setting that we have. So we've been able to start that partnership. We also are visible at lunch at many of our schools. Mostly our directors at times because they are more available throughout the day, our full-time staff. And then just overall, we do ongoing trainings where we do one in the fall, one in the summer, and one in the spring that are a all-day, 8-hour, sometimes 2 8-hour sessions for our summer programming to be able to provide all the skills that are needed to be with kids as often as we are.
It's incredibly impressive to me how many staff you bring on new each year, because there's higher turnover in that population of college kids, recent graduates, et cetera, and your ability to deliver, like common expectations on a daily basis in all these different sites. So I've been impressed and been able to be at one of those kickoff events, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting tonight. I appreciate all the work you do to support education and mental health and to give students just a fun place to be that's safe, where they can be kids and play. That's really important for community building, and I think all of that kind of feeds back into the schools with improved academics, improved behavior, and all that. So thank you.
I would say one of the critical roles the Boys and Girls Club plays for us is ensuring that our kids are ready to learn. And so by having a safe environment before school, during the summer, after school, they come to school better prepared to learn each day, and it's been fantastic. I do have a certificate of recognition to present from the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators for being a child advocate. There's some letters of recommendation in here in our application, and we just wanted to thank you for all that you do as a partner with the School District of La Crosse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are, thank you. All right. So we'll move on to the consent agendas.
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So the consent agenda is a mechanism used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. With a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez, we'll approve the items as presented unless there are items that board members want to remove from the consent agenda. Hearing none, we will approve unless there are any objections. All right, we'll move on to the board consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez, we'll approve the items on the board consent agenda unless there are items that board members want to remove. Hearing none, we'll approve them as presented. All right, our next item is a closed session. So the La Crosse Board of Education will consider a motion to move into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes Section 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session, to wit, request for qualifications proposal review regarding the sale of Lincoln Middle School. Is there a motion to convene to closed session?
So moved.
All right. A roll call vote will be taken.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Dr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Dr. Sprague?
Aye.
Ms. Sukla?
Aye.
Ms. Baumann?
Aye. All right, are we going to be upstairs?
Upstairs.
Downstairs. So we'll go up in 209. So I will consider a motion to reconvene back in open session.
Second.
Okay, with a motion by Dr. Jimenez and a second by Mr. Korberg. Do we need to do a voice vote on that one if we're reconvening? Okay. Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we are back in open session. Okay, our next item on the agenda is the Operational Expectation Monitoring Report, OE8, Communicating with and Support for the Board. And a reminder, this is the monitoring report we saw last time, so we are approving or considering motions to approve the report for what we saw last time. We will have a second to look forward.
I would make a motion that with respect to the provisions of operating expectations 8, communicating and support for the Board of Education concludes that the superintendent district are in compliance with exceptions noted. The only exception that I would like to note is OE 8.3 regarding the annual audit. According to the DPI audit manual, that is due to DPI on the 15th of December. It was presented to the board on the 9th of January. Since technically as I understand it, the audit belongs to the board because it's reviewing the work of the staff, that was just out of sync in terms of the timeliness. It went to DPI before we approved it. That would be the only exception that I noted.
Is there a second for that motion? Do we need a second to begin discussion of that? Okay, is there a second to begin? Okay, so we can begin discussion of that 8.3. Ms. Sprang, do you have any?
Which one is it?
8.3, indicator 1, right?
Yes, it's regarding the annual audit.
The annual audit is due to DPI by the auditor by December 15th.
Correct.
But not to the board, to the audit, to
So it goes to
DPI.
DPI before it goes to this body, before this body accepts the audit report?
Before we bring the audit report to you.
But the report was dated the 2nd of December, so it could have come to us before it went to DPI.
Yeah, we've always had the auditor come and present on that, and so it has always worked out best, the first meeting in January.
Ms.
I'm just
Sprang?
thinking in terms of compliance, and I don't think anybody did purposely anything wrong. It's just when I was just looking that you referenced a statute, and so I start looking at what are the requirements, and that's what led me to this. So.
So a question about.
When to have the auditor come? I mean,
Well-
I think part of it is also that we have a work plan, and this was scheduled on the work plan to be done in January, so I would not say it has anything to do with the administration, but how the board scheduled the work plan. So I would not necessarily consider this not in compliance. We followed what our work plan was and what we set out to do. Now, if we want to change that for the next go-round, then that's a different story, and that may be something we want to talk about in the next agenda item. But for now, I would say we are in compliance because we followed our work plan.
So Ms. Sprang, when other districts, do they follow similar timelines? I mean, is this pretty standard?
yeah, I mean, not all districts have their auditor come and explain their audit report to the board, because that's really what we're doing. We're explaining the audit, and because this district is large and complicated, the board has always well received the lead auditor to come present to the board.
There's been years where, depending on GASB changes or other things, they might get extensions, they might not actually get it done by even December. We've had in other cases. The one thing I would highlight is the indicator says the superintendent informs the board of significant transfers of money within funds or other changes substantially affecting the district's financial condition. The reason we highlighted the audit in that case with the indicator is just to indicate that the auditor felt that we had done so in that statement. Operating budgets are adopted, et cetera, et cetera. And so, from my perspective, this indicator wasn't about when the audit was presented, and we can certainly add that as an indicator, and I think probably in our more financially oriented OEs, we have that. But this was just about trying to meet that indicator and finding evidence someplace that said we did that, as opposed to like a compliance letter or something. But we can certainly address, the audit on our work plan and do that as well.
Other discussion from board members about the motion that's on the table? All right, so there's a motion, so we can do another vote. The motion was to judge this in compliance with exceptions noted, specifically excluding 8.3 as not compliant. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
All right. So we can consider another motion, or do we have?
We're back to
put
the main
this-
motion, which is to approve, well, no, we didn't have a main motion, so
Yeah.
yeah, somebody would have to make a motion.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion in regard to the monitoring report for policy OE8, communicating with and support for the board, and with respect to the provisions of policy BSR 5, superintendent accountability. Board of Education concludes that the superintendent and district are in compliance.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, with a motion by Dr. Jimenez and a second by Mr. Korberg, we will approve this as in compliance, and we'll do a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right. So we will move on now to looking forward with OE8. So that last one, we were judging compliance looking back. This is our chance to kind of look forward and discuss the template that we will use next time. And I think maybe Deb, we can start off with 8.3 if there was, so the administration had a recommended indicator change, which we can start with that, or we can move on, continue the discussion about 8.3, indicator 1. I am open to however the conversation needs to flow.
My only intention is that we just are in compliance with timelines of this board approving, and not approving, we accept the audit report, we don't approve it. Accepting the audit report before it goes to DPI, I would like to see that. And if that's a work plan, or if that's in this, however that happens, that would be my interest.
So audit report presented to the board prior to submission to DPI. Okay. I'm just noting this so we can check our schedule and make sure that that can happen. All right.
We have the audit this week, so I'll talk to John Troutman to see if that's a possibility.
Okay.
I don't know that that is.
Okay, thank you. All right, Aaron?
Thank you. There were two proposed changes. One was OE 8.9, indicator 1. We suggest adding the following to define more narrowly the timing of distribution of materials. Board meeting materials are distributed at the time of the posting of the meeting. And we didn't catch OE 8.13 in the first submission. This is a change that was re-uploaded, so depending on when you looked at this, thank you to Ms. Bauman for catching this one. We had changes to in there twice, and this felt confusing, and so we eliminated that to make it more clear. Superintendent will provide for the board annual updates, which include any significant changes to the instructional program. So that makes sense now. It's not confusing as we had it earlier. Those are the only two suggestions that we had for changes to the indicators.
Board member comments? I think 8.9, so the intent in the little cover letter is clear that it includes the workshop materials. When the meeting gets posted, workshop materials would be shared ahead. In the indicator, it doesn't explicitly say that, it says meetings, but as long as we get those, that's fine for me, as long as that intent carries through. Other comments from board members? All right. So if we don't have any specific changes, we will tuck this into the board's consent agenda next time. Okay.
Just to clarify, what are we adding to the board consent agenda? Is it just these two? Are we adding in the change about the audit?
I think, Ms. Sukla, the audit piece.
If that can be
was
addressed
just-
another way, I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that we're in compliance.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can talk with Ms. Steigerwald about that.
Just making an update to GC60,
Mhm.
the annual work plan, assuming that it's feasible
It's-
for the
yeah.
auditors.
Yep.
Asking for to just review information for it, or do you actually want to see the audit? Sounds like the auditor presents, so I think that might be part of the question, is trying to make sure the auditor's here, if that's the intent, that you want to see the auditor and have that presentation prior.
I mean, they could attend remotely, even if that works better for their schedule, but the audit is a report to us of the work done by staff. We should accept that report before we distribute it to other parties, is I think the proper way of how we should do business. And since there is a requirement that it's due to DPI on the 15th of December, we should accept it prior to that date, is what I think would make sense for us to be in compliance. I don't think I'm answering your question.
No, do you need to see the auditor?
I don't have a preference.
Okay. There.
I have a different background than other board members, so I think I'd read the report differently than other board members. And it's thick and it's got a lot in it, and the auditors do present good information, so I'm not discrediting it. I just want to make sure we're in compliance.
We'll seek a December 4th date to get the auditor here and the audit done. We'll talk with the accountant to see if that's possible.
And I think we are in compliance with the DPI, and we do have, our administration administers lots of different agreements without the board explicitly accepting or approving. And so in my understanding of this, we received the presentation and we received the book. The audit report is like a big thing. But as long as the timeline with the DPI was met, my interpretation was we are in compliance, but.
Yes. I would also agree with that. I don't think that there's an issue of compliance here. I think that we are allowing our expert in finance to work with our auditors who are taking a look through our books to ensure that nothing improper has happened. We measure the accountability of this school district through the performance of the superintendent, and so if there were issues, we probably would see them. If there were issues with the audit, whether we accept it or not before the DPI gets it, we still have work to do. So if the issue is compliance, then it's compliance to the DPI. It's not necessarily that we have to see that beforehand, because that's why we have an administration, that's why we have a finance and operations department, to ensure that we are following through on what needs to happen to maintain our fiscal stability and ensure that we're not doing anything improper.
All right, so we will move on to our 2.3. And this is another information item tonight, so we're not taking any specific action. I have some notes that I wrote that I wanted to mention before we look. So when we received the training on the coherent governance workshop stuff, the 3-day training, it was emphasized that results and student performance should be like the focus of your meetings, and like 50% of your time should be discussing those student performance indicators. And so we spend a lot of time discussing a lot of different things, but this is kind of the most important and where most of our focus should go in these results policies. Our 2.3 tonight is just a piece of our 2, and we will see the rest of this over time. And I believe we don't approve it until December. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Or yes, yep, for our 3, yes.
Yeah, okay. So the other thing to keep in mind as we are listening to the presentation and looking at the evidence is to consider that we judge these results policies on whether reasonable progress has been made. And so we set the standards and the indicators of where we want to see our students performing at, and if we're making progress, that if that is reasonable, if what we're seeing is reasonable, we can judge it as making reasonable progress. there's also the option to do reasonable progress with exception or no progress. So those are kind of the pieces that you should keep in mind as we look at everything. The other thing this is a personal struggle for me. So when I look at the results policies, the monitoring reports, I have like a practitioner mindset. So it's really easy to be like, oh, you should do this, and you should try this thing, and have you tried this? But as you hear the information tonight, ask questions to get context of like what's happening, what are you doing to improve things, but try to focus on, is this reasonable progress based on the evidence presented? I think that's it. And one more thing before we go. In that wonderful handout that we got from Linda and Randy on May 18th, there's some questions for monitoring data that I found really helpful as I was going through the results, as just to like consider as I think about the data and the evidence presented. So next time, if you pull that out, take a look and review it as you're going. Sometimes it can elicit great questions that will kind of help you, get the most out of Dr. Lahecki. So I will pass it off now.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann. So redefining ready, Dr. Lahecki presents this report, but there is if we put all the people in the room who touched this report, we wouldn't have enough seats by far. And so Dr. Lahecki has a knowledge that is very wide, but we may not be able to answer every specific question down to the littlest detail. I just want to throw that out there up front. We'll do our best to cover down on all these things, from algebra to AP tests to co-curricular participation to work-based learning, but there's a lot in here, and Dr. Lahecki will do his best to answer all of our questions, but I just wanted to throw that out there, and I'll turn it over to him.
I'm always excited to start a presentation with a number of caveats of what you're about to receive. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. Results policy 2.3 is develop skills necessary for lifelong learning. We've been working on redefining ready for the last few years in our district, and also I would say nationally. So if you would talk to any of our administrators, or any of our staff, when it comes to October, November, when you start to see the school report card, there's always a feeling to it, because it is a standardized test score that's sliced and diced and put through a mathematical formula, and it spits out an accountability measure. If you would ask our educators and our administrators, is there another way that we can measure, can be accountable to our stakeholders? They would prefer that. Nationally, Redefining Ready was created by superintendents around the country, and it's something that we have here in La Crosse to help bridge that connection of our students are more than a test score. So each of the indicators is research-based and used in districts around the country. We have customized one element of it, and I'll speak to that when we get to the career readiness factor and why we customized it. We do have local control of this, and for next steps, when I talk about what we can do with this data going forward, I want to also talk about some next steps of how we can customize this a little bit more to maybe, I don't know, even include some of the other results policies that we have and make this a really robust, rigorous document to give a good flavor of what's happening in the school district of La Crosse. The data you see is for our outgoing seniors from last year. And it's a high school focused metric. So know that these are our graduators or our students that were seniors last year in the school district of La Crosse. The three indicators are all in this report, and they flow together. The first indicator is the percent of students that are considered college ready, the percent that are career ready, and the percent that are both college and career ready. The superintendent and the district administration has marked reasonable progress for all three indicators. You can see the data for the last 3 years of the percent of students that have met this benchmark, and I'll explain what the benchmarks are, because it's a bit complicated, and there's different ways to be considered college ready or career ready. So if you would kind of flip back and forth, I'll talk about the description a little bit, but then if you want to flip to the data on the cover sheet, that might provide context of how we're doing overall. Or you can also look at each of the indicators that's been broken down by reference groups over the last 3 years. And if you get towards the end of ways to get there, one are academic indicators. You have to, an individual student has to have a GPA of 2.8. That's a non-starter. So if a student has 2.79, that would take them out of the equation of being college ready. Grade point average is the strongest metric for post-secondary success. 2.8 is that cut. If they have the 2.8, then there are secondary measures, and they need to meet at least one of these factors. A 3 or higher in advanced placement exam, a C or higher in AP course, a C or higher in advanced standing course in English or math, a C in Algebra 2, extended algebra or honors algebra 2, and then direct dual credit with the university. So I'll go through these, what they mean a little bit more, but just so you know that college ready, the percent you see is if there were 100% of students, each one's looked at individually. It's one of the advantages, I think, of redefining ready, is that rather than just saying, hey, here's a group of students and so many are percent, so many are advanced, this metric can allow an individual student to talk with their counselors, with their family, to say, here's what it would take for me to be considered college ready, and I have research to back it up. Whereas with our Wisconsin Forward, sometimes it's like, just do your best, and it'll reflect our school well. This is something that eventually we could put on a transcript for someone that would look good for the next level. The other benchmark is, well, it is a standardized test. So ACT has indicated what are the minimum cut scores to be considered college ready. And those indicators are, I don't think I have them on the front. It is English, you have to have at least an 18, mathematics a 22, reading a 22, science a 23. And you have to meet all 4 of those scores. So if a student received 3 out of the 4 scores that qualified, that would not be meet that muster for that metric. So our college students have either met the academic indicator or they've met the standardized testing indicator. For career ready, students are deemed to be career ready if they meet 2 or more of the following benchmarks: 90% attendance in their freshman year, transcripted credit with a post-secondary institution, and it's 2 or more of these. Students participate in 2 or more co-curriculars. Students earn a workplace learning experience, and students earn a recognized industry credential. So two of those will qualify for career ready. If you go on the Redefining National website, there's one indicator that isn't included in La Crosse, and to be transparent, I'll share what that is. It's volunteerism. One of the research-based benchmarks is 25 more or more hours of volunteerism for our students. We don't include that in our metrics for 2 reasons. One is it's awfully hard to measure. Our students are volunteering and doing all different things, and what volunteerism looks for one student is different than another. I'll give you an example. I'm here tonight at the board meeting, and my kids would rather be doing something else, but they are volunteering their services to watch my son so I can be here tonight. So instead of being able to, let's say, go out in the community and run a soup event or be at soup, here's where they are. They're helping me tonight. So volunteerism, hard to measure. We don't include it. Sometimes volunteerism is a gift to be able to do. And not all of our students are in a position to externally be able to provide that. College and career ready is a student, an individual student that meets both benchmarks. They're both considered career ready and college ready. All right, going through each individual one are passing AP tests. Universities, students who take AP tests and pass, and passing is usually considered to be a 3 out of 5 or higher, a score of 3 out of 5. A student can take an AP course without taking an AP exam, and the data that you see are, if you think 100% of our students, not all of our students take an AP course. right? So it's not the percentage of students that pass the AP from the group that takes the AP course. It is the overall student population. Students earning a C or higher in the AP course, once again, if you see that overall total at, 43% for this year, that is of the overall student population, not just those that take the AP. So it doesn't mean that 57% of our students got a D or F. It means that 50% of our students either received a D or F or didn't take an AP course in the first place. Students, next one, students earning a C or higher in advanced standing course in English or math. So English or math has a direct correlation to post-secondary success on the college side of things. So we are looking for example, college prep English or some of our terminal advanced standing courses in English and math. We track that, and those individual students that have a C or higher in one of those advanced courses would be one of the indicators. The next indicator is a C or higher in Algebra 2. You may wonder why Algebra 2, why is that so important? That is the level of math that you'll see on the ACT, and it's also directly correlated with post-secondary success. So it's a key metric for most of our universities that will look at students' transcripts to see how successful it was that they were in Algebra 2, and they took at least through Algebra 2. Transcripted and dual credit career pathway course. This is a confusing one. So we have I would say a lacrosse definition for this to clarify. When a student takes a course, either at the university or even in our schools, and simultaneously receives credit that is admissible or potentially admissible in a post-secondary university or technical college. That's called the dual credit, okay? We tend to define transcripted credit with our partnerships with Western. So when we talk about in this report transcripted credit, know that that's the connection to Western. In the very last page of the report, Dr. Roderian put together some data that we'll take a look at together. Talks about transcripted credit. Those courses require two things. They need to have a curriculum that is connected to Western, and we also have to have certified staff, which you'll find when we talk about our definition of dual credit is pretty rigorous on our staff and requires a real good working relationship with their post-secondary institution to get more and more courses as dual credit or transcripted credit. Dual credit, in our definition, are credits that are for our universities. These have to be approved by the Office of Higher Education, the teacher requirements, which are pretty hard for our staff to meet on their own. It is a master's in the content area that they're teaching, or 18 credits above their bachelor's in that specific content area. Many of our staff have master's degrees, but they're often in areas that aren't their content area. They're in professional learning communities, administration, counseling, etc. So it is challenging to make that connection with our post-secondary universities and have our staff also meet that. And that's why you'll notice the percentage is pretty low, but I wanted to break that out just so you can see the different elements of the data. ACT College Ready, I described it a little bit before. You need the minimum in each one of those. Now we move on to Career Ready. Your attendance rate your freshman year is highly predictive of how successful the rest of your college or high school career will be. And that is the metric. So the ninth grade, we're looking at 90% attendance or higher, and that is one of the Career Ready benchmarks. So when we talk about next steps, this is a real big one. The conversations we have with our early ninth graders or end of eighth graders about why attendance matters. It's also one, candidly, that post-pandemic we've been struggling with. And you'll see probably next year when I share this data, we'll take a hit because we're starting to look at next year's seniors that experience that COVID attendance. So I'm just sharing that now. 2 or more co-curricular participation, I've done some reports on that before. This is 2 activities during their 4-year career that are unique. So I did not count if they did sophomore softball and freshman softball. It would have to be, let's say, a diversity club and then a softball. So 2 unique events during their 4-year career. 2.8 GPA. And then career-based experience, it's industry-based certifications. That is on that back page. And it is approved work experiences with our community, and I presented this data in some regards previously. All right. So as you go through each of the individual reference group pages, I wanted to point out the note that's at the bottom of the page, just to clarify it with you all. If you see NA, that means there are less than 10 of our seniors from last year's class that fell within that particular group. If you see the dash going across, that means it was a qualifying group, but there were no students that met that particular criteria. Okay? And that is the same for all the different elements. Broken down over that 3-year span. And then if you want to see the 1-year snapshot of our different reference groups with all the indicators, it's on the, what would it be, the second to the last page. So you can see the 2022-23 reference group summary and take a look at across the board how a different group performed on that. The very back page, have to give credit to Dr. Roderine. She put together this data with her team and thought it was so interesting, so I added it as an appendix for you all, so you can see some of her great work along with her teachers. Because, as I mentioned before, transcripted and dual credit doesn't help without strong teacher collaboration and partnerships with our post-secondary partners. It's not something that you can just tell people to do. There's some work involved here. And the teachers involved should be commended for their willingness to extend themselves and make those commitments and partnerships with our post-secondary folks. It translates into funds for our students. If you receive credits while you're in high school, great, because then that means when you go to either a technical college or college, you won't have to take those credits again. Free money for the students that are able to participate in our transcripted credits. Transcripted credits, as I said, are generally our partnership with Western. They also generally live in our career and technical education areas. They're easier to get certified than, let's say, an English or a math course or social studies, et cetera. So our CTE courses tend to be our ones that hit the mark for our transcripted credits. I do want to read out loud the last 2 data points because I think they're worth repeating or saying. Recent data shows that 21% of students earning transcripted credit in high school with Western Technical College District end up enrolling at Western Technical College in the first year after high school graduation, and almost 25% enroll in Western Technical College within 3 years. Building that bridge, that K-18 bridge, is important, or K-14. And then 53% of our students enrolled at Western Technical College who took a transcripted credit class in high school earned over a GPA, 3.0 GPA in their first year at Western, and 50% students enrolled in a program at Western Technical College who took transcripted credit in high school enrolled for their second year of classes at Western Technical College. Both of those are really important data points. So when they take transcripted credits with us, they're apt to be successful when they do go to Western, and they persist to that second year. That's what we want. So thanks again to Dr. Roderine and her team for putting together the data, but more importantly, doing the work to get the students there. Next steps. This is the year's senior class. And wouldn't it be great if we had metrics along the way, maybe starting in 6th grade, where we could define readiness in 6th grade and motivate students and families, the attendance and all these other ways that we could say, hey, you are ready for the next grade. You are ready to go. There are national metrics for redefining ready for the middle school. There will be 2 committees formed, one with a middle school focus, one with a high school focus, that will generate some of these metrics, which we'll then present to the high school leadership teams for approval. Because right now, candidly, there's a bit of a disconnect. I won't say that our school improvement plans at our high schools specifically connect redefining ready to their school improvement plan. If you look, you will find all these different elements built into their plans, but not that direct connection. So that's one of our goals, is to really connect to the high schools, so our counselors know when they're working with students and families to say, hey, why not think about this particular course? Because guess what? You'll get transcripted credit. It'll make you a better candidate and more successful if you choose Western after. Why not take that instead of something else? Just having that power of the individual conversation, I think, is a good thing for our students and families in district. That's results policy 2.3. Are there any questions that I can try to answer tonight? When I say try to answer.
Questions from board members?
Dr. Lehucky, more of a comment, but just I appreciated that you brought up the dual credit and the transcripted credit. I think, and I come from that old school where, we had to get 6 credits every 5 years, and so most people that have gone through the system probably do not have a content area degree, and so it would probably be a challenge to ask people to go back and get those credits that would then support our students in a different way as education is changing post-COVID especially. But it is an important thing to consider that that is a Higher Learning Commission accreditation requirement of the faculty at the higher education level. So my hope is that the school district, as we look to bringing in new crops of teachers, talking to them about opportunities for them to professionally develop that could also lead them not only to develop in a way that benefits them, but also will benefit our students in the long run, both in the general education areas, but also in the career and tech ed areas. So I think it's a great point to bring up and something for the district to consider as we move forward and as education changes.
Those conversations are happening already.
I figured they would.
When we talk about, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up,
Yeah.
right? Or with our staff, that, hey, this could be a real benefit for you and our staff, or students, if you'd consider going down this path as well.
Yeah.
And I think we have plenty of teachers who are interested. The challenge isn't so much interest from teachers, it's availability of these types of credits for working professionals.
Right.
And so UW Eau Claire has a master's program in English literature that works around working professionals. And so that's an opportunity we've been able to connect people with. But if you're looking for science credits, a biology degree, it's really hard to find something that's available on nights and weekends or is quality distance learning that's, asynchronous. And so that's more the challenge. Finding a math master's for a working teacher is darn near impossible.
And I think a good example of that is, if I'm correct, I think we lost one of our instructors at the Health Science Academy who could teach anatomy and physiology in a transcripted or dual credit way. And as you said, that is a very hard area to get the right credits under your belt in order to do that. So it's going to be challenging in the long term, but I also think it'll be a good challenge and something for us to look forward to. So thank you for that.
Ms. Sukla, did you have a question?
Can you help me understand these numbers a little bit? So for the college ready, we were at 52%, then it went to 48%, now we're looking at 60%. And to be college ready, you need to have a 2.8 GPA and one of the following. So the GPA 2.8 is 54%. So how do we get to 60%? Do you add the ACT plus the 54% for the GPA? I'm trying to translate. I mean, even with students, for example, that passing the AP test, how many of those were students that had the 2.8? How do we get to saying, because at the end of the day, our job is to say college or career or college and career ready. So I'm trying to understand where those numbers come from. Although it is important to know our entire district data, I'm trying to put it together for this particular criteria.
That's a fair question. So there's two ways to be considered college credit, or college ready. So if 54% of our students made it with GPA and then something else, we did have another 6% that didn't have the GPA but met the ACT benchmarks. So that's why that score would be a little bit higher. They didn't have the GPA. They might have a 2.0 GPA, not necessarily where we want the grades to be, but their ACT scores qualified them for college readiness.
Or there were students that had a 2.8 but didn't achieve one of the other criteria.
Could, yes, right. That's fair.
So when you do in the future, like the college ready page, where you break it out by the different reference groups, could you break it out by students that have the 2.8 GPA or higher as well as a reference group?
We break it down student by, so this report is literally a student by student. We download all this information or find all this information for every student and then cross-reference it to get there. So yes, we could break it down in that particular way, but it would still be what you see. I don't know how.
I'm just looking at, for example, passing the AP. So it was 52, 48, 60. So I'm trying to look at what the last 3 years were overall. Then the passing the AP was 16, 11, and 14. So we're up a little bit there, so that might be it. But then it was 53. The next one is the C or higher in AP courses. So it's 53%, 44, 43. So we're going down. The next one, we're holding our own. We didn't increase from 22 to 21, 22 to 22, 23. The next one with the algebra, we actually went down from the previous 2 years. So I'm trying to figure out how do we better understand this. So it seems like when you look at this at first, you're like, how did we get up to 60 when some of these are staying flat or going down? Mm-hmm. And so it just, I think having that information of these criteria, what percentage of those were students with the 2.8 or higher, I think that helps us see where we're excelling for those students that we want to call college ready. Because you have to figure it out to get to your 60%, right? At some point, somebody has to figure it out.
Yeah, it would just have to continuously break down the data differently.
Am I understanding, you'd like to see the number of students or the percentage of students that have done each combination of the 2.8 GPA and one of the other indicators?
Well,
maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
Just generally how many in each of the two buckets?
yeah,
Right.
I'm trying to, so for example, on the detailed one where it's percent graduating class scoring 3+ on AP exam, and then you've got it listed by the different reference groups. Could a reference group be students with a 2.8 or higher GPA? So that kind of more correlates to that. Because I'm trying to figure out like which of,
Right.
it's 2.8 plus something. What is the plus that gets us to career ready? Is one of them more significant than the other? What is that data telling us? And that, I'm not seeing that. You totally don't understand what I'm asking.
I think I get what you're saying. So what's the cross tab on the 2.8 GPA with the other things that are required to get that bucket up to that point? And so if all 54% of the 2.8 GPA, if all of them had one of the other things, which ones are they in? It looks like it's probably most kids are receiving a C or higher in advanced standing or a C or higher in Algebra 2, just based on those percentages, but to have that understanding would be helpful for your kind of examining this data.
And then looking at that compared to the student body, if the students with 2.8 or higher had a certain percentage, but the full class had a different number, that also tells us some data on students that aren't at 2.8 are really failing, or missing out on these opportunities. I think it gives us some good data, and you have to figure it out to get to calculating your 60% one way or the other. So, I mean, I'm sure the data's there.
Yeah, we can look at that as we report data for next year, for sure.
Sure.
So I really like the redefining readiness report card. I feel like it shows students like aptitude beyond just like a ACT. And when I was a kid, it was like the test score defined your success. You mentioned that there's a middle school redefining readiness report card potentially coming down the line, which is interesting too, because I think students' performance in middle school, which is a very tough time for a lot of kids, kind of gets defined by, you know, how they're doing in a specific class, like what kind of grades they're getting, or do you have any information on like what that might look like or where the focuses might be for like a middle school ready report card?
Sure. If we use the national benchmarks there, and like I said, we'll form a committee because we will want to lacrosse this up a little bit. As long as we have research-based indicators, there may be some metrics that our buildings are really interested in. But at the attendance, first of all, middle school, they don't differentiate between college and career. It's just ready. You're not making those kind of determinations in the middle school. So it is your attendance, it's passing grades in English and math. I can see us adding in, this is just me speaking without the committee, on our standards-based report card, we also are providing feedback on habits of mind. Those are your 21st century kind of work skills type things. That data could feed into this. What is another one? I said passing grades, English and math, attendance. I would probably say some work in our ACP work, our academic and career planning, would probably be a good indicator. But, you know, progressively more as they move through the system. This is the seniors, but the middle school, it's more like, I know what the other one is. It's the co-curriculars. So with the middle school co-curriculars, two or more, those are the ones they recommend at the national level.
Cool. Yeah, it'd be cool to look at when that happens, like, to do like a cohort of like these students were measured as this many were ready, this percent were ready, and then how does that carry through when they become seniors, and is that trajectory like remaining, or are there students who kind of rise to the occasion when they hit high school, or are there students who fall back?
That's a good point. What I don't like about this, it's a big aha. It's August. And now we have this data on our graduating seniors. I think this data and information is a lot more actionable if they get it in the middle school and high school years.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a nice board report now,
Yeah.
but we're looking for actionable data.
Cool. Thank you. Other comments from board members?
Dr. Lehucky, I'm looking at the individual indicators just on the first page, and looking at, you know, year over year in some of the academic indicators. See or higher in an advanced standing course, see or higher either math or English, and the transcriptive credit, and so, or excuse me, not that one, but see or higher in AP courses. And I'm seeing a smaller percentage of a smaller cohort of students, you know, year over year. We know what's happening with our demographics. I'm wondering, just maybe you can speak a little bit, how are our course offerings affecting this? If we're not having enough students to run certain AP classes, is that affecting things? Or, you know, nobody wants to take advanced speech anymore or something like that? I guess I'm asking something about how the demographics that we know we're experiencing on the large scale are impacting what we're seeing in our percentages on these indicators.
What isn't fun to talk about, because we want to be done with it, is the impact of COVID, right? So we're looking at this year's graduating class that had their high school career abbreviated instructionally in some ways. So there might be a dip associated with that. One that comes to mind is Algebra 2. So our seniors generally take Algebra 2 your junior year. Well, right when we were going through some of our instruction, they were taking Algebra 1. So their background and baseline might not have been as strong going into Algebra 2. I would also use this as an opportunity to promote our standards-based group work with our staff, because it will provide more consistency to grading. when you all went through your own high school experience, there were teachers that were just easy graders, right? They were just easier, and some that were harder. As we transition staff, that can play an impact on this, but by connecting to the standards, we're going to make less subjectivity with our grading practices, which will give more reliability and validity to the data you see here. So those are two things that come to mind when I look at data like this, but we do need to dig deeper, for sure.
And with such small cohorts, sometimes it's cult of personality. You get a veteran teacher who's built up this strong program and really popular, and you can get, kids that would never consider that field want to take it just to be around that individual. And if there's retirements or changes, there's this variability. It happens particularly in our specials type classes, band and choir. Those are driven by personalities oftentimes. Same thing with AP courses and those kind of one-offs. And so that can have an impact too, this cohort of kids might really identify with that individual, the next one might not, or there's a change due to retirement or a new teacher who's still getting their legs underneath them and building that, that culture. And so, with 400 some kids, you can get a fair amount of variability based on a single teacher change with AP success.
However, be able to track that cohort, if we were able to break the data down by grade, I think would give more power to this last piece of data that you see about the students. See their trajectory along the way.
Thank you. Were there any other comments before we move on?
I think the only other question I might have, Dr. Lehucki, if you can answer it, is how have our advanced placement offerings increased or decreased over this time?
We've increased offerings without a doubt.
Good.
In every subject area?
No.
Okay.
But overall. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lehucki.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the next information item, which is the Fund 80 Community Service Fund Budget, Programs and Services. I'll turn it over to Ms. Spring.
Sure. So this is just another part of our budget plan document. So we are sharing these with you in pieces. The Community Service Fund levy is a separate levy that the board will be expected to approve in October when you approve the levy overall. So this is a special fund that is used to fund programs that not only service K through 12 kids in our district, but families and children throughout the community. So you had the benefit of last meeting, meeting our community impact coordinator and one of the community schools coordinators. Those positions are funded through this fund. And then also tonight, you had the Boys and Girls Club. They are one of our partners in some of this funding. So the after-school programming, which the Boys and Girls Club is part of, isn't really about after-school care. It's about programming that takes place after the school day, whether it happens within a school in our district or somewhere in the community or at the Boys and Girls Club. And those are for strengthening the community of those schools or those areas within our community. So that is one part. Then we have our building community use. Our buildings are open to all kinds of groups, for the most part, free of cost. However, we do have to staff our schools, so this fund helps with that so that we can offer our buildings for community use. The community liaisons have been in this program for quite some time. We offer one that's of African American descent and one Southeast Asian liaison. Those roles are very important in this community because we have quite a bit of community in those areas that benefit from the services of these coordinators or liaisons. The community partnership programs, we have a lot of them. Currently, the La Crosse System of Care Program, the Hinchin-Huber Neighborhood and Shoe Mellon Community Partnerships, which are led by the Community Impact Coordinator, the YWCA Restorative Justice Program, and the La Crosse Promise program. The community school coordinators are also in this funding, and we met one of them last time. I think they gave us a great insight of what happens with those community schools and their outreach to the community. Early childhood community partnerships, we have in the past partnered with the Parent Place and other early childhood offerings in the community. The Logan Pool is open to the public. This subsidizes a little bit, especially when we offered life swim lessons. So for those lifeguards and people offering that we cannot cover under operational costs, this levy offsets some of those personnel costs. The school resource officers, we are continuing this program. They serve both the public and the private schools and other stakeholders in the city of La Crosse. So we changed that a few years ago, and then we also have a DARE officer, but I think we might be looking at some other uses for that officer. So what you see right here is the proposal for the levy. Now this is by program, but it is not the budget for these programs. So you might see an area where we are not proposing a budget. It doesn't, a levy. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have that program or fund that program. But when we levy for these programs, and if there's anything left over after a school year, we need to use those dollars in the next school year for that same program. We can't transfer any of these dollars within these areas for once we've set the levy in those areas. So I'm going to hand this out to you. We thought this might be a good idea to give you some idea that when the budget is proposed for the Fund 80, it's going to be more than what the levy is. Because also within the Community Service Fund is things like our food pantries. Our food pantries are totally supported by donations, but they are community service, so they're funded they're kept in Fund 80 for the tracking. We also have a little bit of I think it's at Logan High School, it's Bike Works. It's a program where they might fix bicycles and sell them to the community, and then they get more bikes. So those are things that are still community services, but not funded by the levy. So as you can see then, I gave you both the history of the levy and then the history of the corresponding budgets. So as you'll notice back in, let's look at the school resource officers. Years ago, we used to levy about $250,000 and budget just about the same, and we would use that for that program. But since we narrowed our program, we don't have that same cost, so we levy less for that. Then there was years of COVID where we didn't use the funds that we had levied for because we couldn't have after school programs or community gatherings. So those funds then supported the following years, and we've come to that point where those funds are pretty well depleted, and now we need to go back to funding these programs at the same level we had before. So, questions?
Is that the case of what's happening with the Logan Pool here? Because I noticed we did levy funds at the start of COVID and haven't since.
Right, because they no longer are offering swimming lessons right now.
We haven't been able to find staff with the staffing shortages and the pay that we've been able to offer. We just haven't been able to fund that, and so there's a need to levy funds because we're not able to offer that community service.
Is there a limit on this levy? A percentage?
Is there a limit on this levy? There is not.
Is there for example, other question, on like, for example, the community school coordinators and the community liaisons, you indicate that's for a couple of staff. Does that also include overhead costs for them and administration costs for them?
It includes things like if they have professional development or if there's supplies needed for some of their community gatherings. We do not include any kind, we cannot include any administrative costs.
So there's only 2 positions in each of those categories?
Mm-hmm. In the community schools coordinators, there's actually, I believe, 3 positions in there because we have a district-wide community schools coordinator.
Thank you. And then on the community partnership programs, is that, so that's to like the presenters we had this evening, is that bid out on a competitive bid, or how is that determined who gets those resources?
Those are just partnerships that Mr. Teff works out with our community partners when we have a
So like
community
Crosse, the System of Care program is something that we developed in collaboration with the county and the city many years ago. And so that's been a long-standing partnership with them. We utilize the authority of the county, and we help fund that program to get, a kind of a proactive approach to some of those things. Lacrosse Promise is a long-standing agreement that's been in place to provide the Future Center work in our schools, along with an interest in developing neighborhoods through a scholarship program. So that's been a long-standing program. Hinchinhuber and Shoe-Mullen, those have been a multi-year collaboration with the county for providing neighborhood support work so that students are ready to learn when they come to our schools. So those are the YWCA Restorative Justice Program, looking at expertise in our community to help our students approach challenging behaviors in a different way, as opposed to traditional disciplinary practices, trying to find a program that allows us to keep kids out of the criminal justice system, and restorative justice is a promising practice for that, and they have expertise in that area, but we do not bid them out.
Yeah, it might be helpful to have a list of who those are and kind of how much goes to them. I think that would help us understand this piece a little bit better. The after-school program, is that district staff, or is that also out to other agencies?
That can be our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, but we also have funds available at each school for their, evening community programs or outreach.
Thank you.
Can I go back and ask you a question about the community partnerships? And maybe I'm piggybacking on what you were saying a little bit. So like, who in our district staff is out there looking for potential partners? How are they responding to needs perceived in the district? For example, the restorative justice group, right? Where did that come from, and who eventually put that into place?
Yeah, it's often organic. We might identify a need. So like, I wasn't here when the restorative justice thing got going. I don't know, Dr. Harsey, if you remember the origin of that. Something like the Lacrosse Promise was a group of people that got together to think about revitalizing neighborhoods with the same intent as what was the promise in Michigan? Kalamazoo Promise, thank you. And that was funded by a very large benefactor who made college free. What they found in that particular promise was that kids would go to college, but they weren't prepared for college, and so they would fail out quickly, and it was, well-intentioned, but not executed well, with some unintended second, third order effects. here in La Crosse, the group that got together to put that together wanted to start with supporting kids going to college. And so we started the Future Centers, and we help support that position here in the school district. And they do great career fairs and work with our counselors for ACP stuff and set up job shadows and really supports kids going on to the next phase of their life. And then they fundraised and created a foundation for the scholarship to go to college if you build a house or own a house in a particular neighborhood. And so pretty organic, where we see opportunities for partnership. The Hinch and Huber neighborhood thing arose out of, these walk-in issues that were coming into our schools from the Huber homes. There would be, local issues with kids getting on the bus or family disputes that would carry over into their children that would come to school, and we'd be dealing with them at school. And as we did root cause analysis, we're like, the strategy to fix this efficiently is to get into the neighborhood and help families and kids where they're at before they get to the school so that they're ready to learn when they show up. And so we worked in collaboration with the county to create this position that was a social worker that worked out there and able to get kids help, to provide services to families, to interrupt those issues before they walked into our schools so that when kids showed up, they had clean clothes, they were, had a good breakfast, and they were ready to learn that day. And so that helps the school district, helps all kids that live in that neighborhood, whether they attend our schools or not. They might go to Aquinas on a scholarship, perhaps, and so that was a great kind of organic development as well. We identified a problem, worked with partners, thought creatively how to fund this, for something that helps our entire community, regardless of where they attend school. And I don't know, Troy, if you've thought at all about
The only thing I would reiterate is something that Mr. Teff said earlier, is that any of our community partnerships are based on the foundation of a memorandum with metrics attached. So there's accountability laced throughout any of these partnerships to ensure that we are seeing achievable measures and goals that go along with any exchange of Fund $80. And so that's the part that I think we want to make sure that we articulate here, and we make sure that the community is aware that those Fund $80 are being used with accountability measures attached as well.
I would say, I believe that this is the first year we've included rigorously across our MOAs accountability measures. We've been getting better at these things as we move forward, and so I think this is the first year we'll really be able to look back and look at all of those accountability measures and provide that report, I think, that Ms. Sukla was looking for in terms of how do we do? Is it meeting our expectations, and should we continue this partnership or not? Some of our organizations have kept great data and will have really good things to report, and others, we have some work to do if we're going to continue that partnership. So.
Other questions or comments from board members? All right, thank you, Ms. Spring. Alrighty, so we will move on to announcements, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Sprague.
I do not have any announcements.
No announcements tonight, and Ms. Berkedahl is excused. So I do have one announcement, but I need to get my note. So WASB resolution proposals are due September 15th. At our next board meeting, if you note under the agenda planning, we have an information item where board members could bring forth resolutions for the board to consider. This is kind of a weird process. In my time on the board, we haven't had one that we have. Has that happened under your time, on your tenure? Has it happened with you too? Yeah. So WASB, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, WASB, has a web page where they kind of describe the process and the different timeline and what these WASB resolutions even are. The resolutions are adopted by WASB, and our delegates from the different member school boards will go and vote on the different resolutions to adopt. And then those resolutions will kind of steer WASB's lobbying focus. Yep, so it's a great way for member boards to have kind of those big issues, like to collaboratively, collectively try to influence policy. So keep that in mind, and if you want that website, I can share it with you if you want to see. The website also includes the past resolutions, so if you want to just see like even what it is and how it goes, we will have an information item for that to come forward at the next board meeting. But that is all I have, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Engel.
One other WASB item, the fall regional meetings are coming up. You might have gotten a flyer, it looks something like this. There's an opportunity on October 5th in Galesville. I've attended a number of these things with school board members over the years. I've found them beneficial, great opportunity to network with other school board members across the area and kind of learn from their experiences and to get great information directly from WASB. It starts at 6 and runs till 8:30, and then there's also a workshop from 4 to 6, or 4:30 to 6, school board member responsibilities under public records law. So if that's something you're interested in, great opportunity to learn with other local school board members. So highly recommend those opportunities if you get a chance.
You can't attend that date, but I saw there's other dates. Can you go to other locations, even if you're not from that one?
Yep, you can attend any of them. So yeah, there's, like
The big
12.
big thing this year is that our region is nominating and electing a representative for the region, because the person is done and cannot run again. So that will happen at this region, and you have to be a member of this region. I'm not sure how it votes, how the voting goes, but if you went to another one, then you wouldn't be able to do that.
Good point, thank you.
Yeah, Wisconsin, Dells, Menominee, Fenimore, there's some places nearby if that's interesting, and you get an opportunity.
Is there a virtual one too?
And there's a virtual one too, November
There
1st.
used to be, yeah.
Yep, online, so that's handy also, and I think they probably record it ultimately too, and, so they've made stuff pretty accessible. And then I would just highlight that we have a facility advisory committee meeting coming up on Monday, August 14th. That's all for me.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to agenda planning.
Make a motion to approve the August 21st, 2023 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections.
Thank you. So with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez.
I'm just wondering, I have a couple items. Prior to 4 of us getting on the board, there was a discussion by this body about student representatives being part of it, and I'm wondering when that might come back. I'm not suggesting it's next meeting, but I'd like to see that.
Yeah, and we can discuss, and I know we also have looking at policies in a workshop, and I just have
That was my second one,
touch
so thank
base
you.
on that. Yep.
And then my third one is, and I appreciate the communications from our superintendent, but I've attended 2 of these facility advisory committees. Those conversations are very robust. The data is, and the information that they get is very important information. As I understand this process, we're going to get a summary of all of that at the end and have to make some decisions. And it seems to me, as a board member and attending these, because there's so much good information, I feel very disconnected from this process. And I'm wondering if we could have a workshop or some conversation as a board about, I don't want to stop what they're doing, I don't want to undo what they're doing. But for example, at the last meeting, they were struggling with making decisions on which of the 4 elementary schools highlighted
Sure, so
one or 2 or 4.
we can talk about this later, after the meeting. I can talk with you directly about this, and then we can, if in the process of that, we can talk about.
I just
where
think
would
that
fit
there's
in.
so much good information, and getting summary information is, and I appreciate the administration's effort to do that. You have done a good job of that. I just think that there's just so much robustness that we're not getting that would be really important and helpful to us, and how just getting a report at the end of this, I think, is going to really be limiting our ability to have a good understanding of all what's gone into this.
Sure.
That's
Thank you
my
for your
point in bringing
comments.
it up.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez. We'll do a vote on this one. So all those in favor of approving the August 21st agenda with any additions or corrections, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the last thing on our list is the board debriefing. And tonight, Dr. Garcia would have handled, but she had an excused absence, so I am stepping in. So you can notice under there we have the facilitator schedule. So the next board member will be Dr. Jimenez.
Yeah, I was actually, Ms. Steigerwald reached out to me and asked if I would
Oh,
be
are you
willing to
prepared?
prepare for
Awesome.
tonight, and Dr. Garcia would switch with
Okay,
me.
well,
But
I have
I'm
some
more than
notes.
happy to hand it to
You
you.
have some notes. If you have things you want to comment on, we can share the responsibility.
Yeah.
That was my mistake, I didn't close the loop.
Okay.
So if you want to start, Ms. Baumann?
Sure, yeah. So I think we had great conversation. I like the focus on having the Boys and Girls Club representatives so we could learn about another youth serving organization that we partner with, and the discussion around the results policy and the emphasis on that I think was good. I think a thing to continue to work on is when we consider the monitoring reports, we use the evidence presented to prove that, to judge compliance. And so when we're looking at a monitoring report, we're receiving tons of information, but we need to refer back to the policy, look at the indicator, and judge if the evidence makes the indicator true. So that's kind of just the last piece that I had. Do you have any additional comments?
I do. I appreciated your comment about the practitioner versus oversight.
Yeah.
Right? All of us are practitioners in different areas, but that is not our role as a board member. Our board member role is oversight. And so measuring reasonable progress from a reasonable person's standard. So I would direct us back to a number of our policies. For example, BSR 2, which talks about that the superintendent, who is our only employee, is directed through official action of this body. So even though we as individual board members may have a good idea that may be beneficial for the district to move forward, the only way that things will change or to direct the superintendent is by official vote. So we need to remember that, even though we may say some things, and I know that the administration is taking copious notes on everything that happens here, it is still true that it must be an official action of the board in order to make any changes. I'd also direct us back to BSR 4, the authority of the superintendent, where it talks about, I think pertinently, number 4, that we can change as a board the results in operational expectations and shift the boundary between the board and the superintendent areas of responsibility, but the board will respect any reasonable interpretation, even though the superintendent's decisions may not be the decisions the board or its members may have made. So we have to consider that when we are trying to make changes, are we keeping in mind that we have given authority to the administration and that we are staying clear of that division that between the board and the superintendent relationship. I'd also talk about BSR 5, the superintendent's accountability. So we have a work plan. We have created that work plan. We follow that work plan. There are different ways in which we can monitor data. It talks about the consistent performance standard. It talks about final determinations and the reasonable person standard. So there are a number of policies here that help direct us as board members and remind us as board members of the role and responsibility that we hold. So I would also, ask the board members to continue to consider those policies and review those policies as we do our work. Otherwise, like you, I have really appreciated the questions. I've really appreciated the insights that the board members bring to the conversations on the agenda items that are put before us, but we have to temper that along with the responsibilities of us as board members, as oversight, and in the scheme of our operational expectations, our board superintendent relationship, and all of the other policies that we have.
Thank you. Do other board members have any input on this before we adjourn for the night? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.